And the main event is Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn taking on Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa for the undisputed tag team championships. It's just Paul Heyman in the corner of the challengers, and Sami Zayn comes out with Owens in a thobe, as I believe it is referred to as.
You're asking, I'm not going to correct you on it, but
Okay.
yeah, like, traditional Islamic robe. Yeah.
He comes out, and this guy is the biggest babyface on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is before he even gets on the microphone, and he addresses the audience in Arabic. And my God, this was a recreation of Montreal for
totally
Sami Zayn. Like, they made this guy feel as though he was the biggest star on a show that had plenty of stars on it. Sami Zayn was number one.
Yeah. I mean, I think in sort of spirit, it was very much like Sami Zayn's homecoming to the Middle East area, like he was kind of being portrayed as that, as like the person highest on the card with maybe the deepest roots to I guess the dominant religion of the territory, right? So like, let's kind of put that into perspective, like this guy who hasn't been on these shows for years, all of a sudden like comes in and is the biggest star on the show. And not only that, like he's pretty much their like kind of home territory babyface from this point on. It's pretty crazy, this whole ride.
Yeah, and it's one that, I mean, they kind of, obviously they're not going to get into the specifics, but they
didn't mention it at all. Here's the other thing, like the commentary did not mention, so like, that Umrah, when the thing that Ali went to, Sami was a part of that as well, and that was never brought up once. His Syrian heritage was also not brought up here, and maybe that one you can understand a little bit more. But with Ali, they went full bore, like talking about, what he did in this area. Sami Zayn, they've just kind of like not mentioned at all.
Yeah, and it's one where, listen, you can just take this in as a really cool moment for Sami Zayn and this crowd that loved him, but let's not, like, there are so many politics attached to this. And probably, to your point, it's a great pickup on your part, the fact that his Syrian heritage was never mentioned on the broadcast, which you would think that would be connecting the dots for the viewer at home. And as well, like Kevin Owens at the press conference, you've waited 5 years for him, but it was like, yeah, because he was not invited here for 5 years, and now he is. It's not really, you on a WWE broadcast cannot explain it either.
Yeah.
But it was like treated as here is this homecoming for Sami Zayn, but this was like, obviously, like there is no separating like the entertainment and politics of this one.
Yeah, a little bit awkward, but I'm extremely happy for
it. Was an incredible scene,
and the people who now have like a legitimate top baby face that they could cheer for. Yeah,
and I mean, I did not necessarily see this sort of environment for Sami Zayn, and as soon as this bell rung,
how important does this make Sami Zayn to this company now? I mean, he already was, but now, I mean, he's not just sort of like your top babyface in Canada. He's your top babyface in the Middle East as well.
I think it's the fact that he was. It would be interesting to know like what exactly the process was. Like, was this a request by the government for him to be on this show? Was this can we bring Sami on this show? Like, what exactly was the correspondence that led to this? But if this is one where like Sami is requested to be on these shows, then his value is pretty great because the government is the one that are paying for these shows, and their requests are the ones that are going to be asked of. Yeah. So it's just a rabid crowd to start this one. And I did not think for a second that they were losing the title belts once this bell rang.
Yeah.
I went into this show where this was the hardest one to kind of figure out. Dude, when this bell rang, I was like, there is not a prayer they are beating Owens or Zayn in this.
Well, we would have said that. We said that in Montreal. We said that, at WrestleMania as well.
You're right.
But the stakes are a little bit different.
I felt pretty confident at the beginning of this one.
Yeah.
Dude, the first 3 minutes, no one touches. They're just milking this crowd. They're singing, they're chanting, they're playing up the crowd 3 minutes before contact is made.
So upon entrance, like you couldn't see it that clearly, but it definitely looked to me like Sami was wiping tears from his eyes.
When he was walking down the entrance, it looked like he was tearing up. Yeah.
And I'm
sure it was a pretty emotional moment for him. I'm sure this was up there for him.
Cole mentioned his family and friends were here. in attendance as well.
And they control Zayn and they're beating him down. Just really simple stuff because this crowd was electric. Solo super kicks Owens off the apron. It was like 10 minutes of getting the heat on Sami Zayn before he finally made the first tag to Kevin Owens, who comes in, and there's a spear that gets blocked by a knee from Owens, and then he lands the stunner, but Reigns bounces off the rope and hits a spear with both men going down from their respective moves. Sikoa then stops a haluva kick, and then Zayn blocks a Samoan spike and then hits the haluva, and Roman Reigns dives in to make the save. Reigns then misses Sami Zayn and spears referee Dan Engler. So Zayn hits his own Superman punch, does the Reigns pose in the corner, but then gets hit with a Superman punch. Owens spears Reigns, so they're stealing Roman's moves and using them on him. And that is when, Way called this one, the Usos appear. They must have been incognito in Saudi Arabia this week, and they attack Kevin Owens on the floor, double super kick. They tip the desk onto him. They super kick Zayn, and then Zayn ducks, and a double super kick nails Solo Sikoa. And the Usos are stunned that they made this mistake, and Roman Reigns is just staring a hole through these two guys. He confronts them, shoves Jimmy away, and starts yelling at Jay. Pie faces him and yells, "Get out of my ring," when all of a sudden, boom, Jimmy super kicks Roman Reigns, and Jay is looking at like, "You just shot Dad." And Jay cannot believe what he has just seen, and he starts screaming at Jimmy. And Jimmy tells Jay, "I'm doing what you should have done a long time ago." And he hits Roman with another super kick and tells Jay, "It's you and I now. I'm your brother, not him." And he stops Jay from checking in on the tribal chief. They need to go. We've got to get out of Dodge. And with that, Owens hits a stunner to Sikoa, then a haluva kick. And with the pin, a new referee slides in to count 3 at 26 minutes and 22 seconds. And Jay is just in shock. Roman is pissed. And the bloodline is disintegrating as Night of Champions comes to an end.
And Sami Zayn holds both of his championships over Roman Reigns and a split up bloodline that he was one of the direct causes of. I mean, this was as big of a win for Sami as he's ever had over not just the Usos, but now also Roman Reigns as well. Yeah.
And they did a twist on the ending I saw here of if it would have been Sikoa taking the pin, that it's almost like Roman seeing Sikoa screwing up. That was not the story here. It was Roman, like it's all the heat is on the Usos for costing it and nothing on Sikoa coming up short. So it's still like Sikoa and Roman are attached at the hip, and it's the Usos that acted out and screwed up their title win.
Mm-hmm. Really great closing.
Great storytelling in this match. It was an entertaining match. I'm still going with Cody and Brock as my match of the show, but this was a match that, for me talking about the length earlier of the women's title match, 26 minutes, it did not overstay its welcome for me. I thought that they paced it really well. And I mean, the first half of this match, it's simple, like any other house show that you would have expected, but the crowd was going nuts. They didn't have to do a whole lot. And then the ending, it was all the twists and turns and what was going to happen that grabs you for these big bloodline matches when they have them. And we see a lot of these, like every Raw and SmackDown, it feels like we're getting some combination, but for the big matches, it's still very dramatic. And I think this is I think SmackDown is going to do a very big number on Friday with the 1,000-day celebration, which dovetails into the fallout of this with the bloodline and how it's all figured in.
I want to know what happens because Roman dedicated this win to Afa and Sika.
Oh, could you imagine them showing up and slapping Roman?
Well, they were supposed to show up for this, what is it?
They were going to be there for one of the, was it the
celebration?
The Raw, whatever celebration it was in January?
Yeah. And so I'm assuming, like, I think this perfectly paves the way for Afa and Sika to show up and to show their disappointment in Roman Reigns, and how great would that be, So this 1,000-day celebration, I think, is going to be pretty big for the next, like the real cementing of this bloodline breaking up. I love the stuff with the Usos. I have to be honest, I kind of found the content of the match, for my taste, a little bit dull at this point because I think I'm expecting a little bit more now. Like, I mean, I've seen Roman have this type of match for so much that I expected something a little bit different in a tag team setting. And it wasn't all that different. It's very much the same style of match. Roman does a lot of talking, a lot of taunting, a lot of delaying. And in this case, he's letting Solo handle much of the physicality. Like when the stakes are
This will vary on like and I think most are with the story, but like it's very much on like the story aspect. Like the work is fine, but that's not going to I think be your litmus test of whether you like this or not.
It's the type of match where like nothing's really going to happen until you get that sort of big closing scene, and the closing scene was really great with the Usos. So now we get Roman and Solo versus the Usos, presumably. No titles at stake, no titles needed even, and then Sami and KO can move on to Judgment Day.
Yeah, and do you see that the tag match being the next big match? Do you see like Roman and Jimmy, or do you think they go to the tag match first and foremost after
everything, John? You know, they can get through all those, and I hope they pace themselves accordingly. But like, big destination that seems immediate is like the tag team match. But like, you know, this certainly elevates Jimmy to a higher status. You can argue Jay was already there as like somebody who was really kind of put into focus, had that singles run. Jay is very much, you know, kind of in line for that spot right now. So how would you play it? You know, how would you kind of like lay out the next several weeks?
Number one contenders match with the Usos against the Wild Samoans.
Sure.
No, I think that the tag match is I guess the question would be like you're I like the way they kind of left it with Jay. It's not as though Jay just bought in and was 100% with Jimmy here. Right. It was sort of like, you're my brother and I'm leaving with you, but I do not endorse this move.
And you know, the way that Jimmy put it was like, I'm doing what you should have done a long time ago. I mean,
that's the big spot, is Jay finally breaking his tie with Roman. Because he's the one that's
with Roman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, or could he break his tie with Jimmy?
I think that's what you're led to be left with. And I think that's going to be like the Roman, like gaslighting character is going to try and get into the head of Jay, because he still has his hooks in Jay, and he's lost Jimmy. He's lost Sami. Yeah. He's lost Jimmy. And now he's clinging. He's got Solo, and Jay is like his swing henchman.
Yeah, I think there's some great story to be told left. I mean, look at this. Like, we're like a year deep into this whole year plus, you know, into this whole bloodline thing, and they still find interesting ways of combining these guys to tell some really captivating stories. So we'll see how they play it out. And overall, what were your thoughts on what's this show called? Night of Champions.
I thought, listen, the crowd was elevated it a lot. I thought that the last two matches, along with the Seth Rollins, AJ Styles matches, those would be the three matches I would recommend on the show. So I think that it was you could go like thumbs up. I would I'm a tougher grader, and maybe this is like somewhere above thumbs in the middle to thumbs up. But I think the crowd is going to put people kind of over the top, that this was a pretty good show overall. There was a lot of storyline ramifications from this show for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was a good show. I thought they managed to build people like well. You know, in the case of somebody like an Ali, in the case of like integrating somebody like a Zoe Stark into a prominent storyline. They springboarded, you know, themselves into like a further bloodline story between the Usos and Roman, and yeah, like Cody and Brock is also in really good shape. That's a feud that's been elevated coming out of this. Trish and Becky is a feud that's been elevated coming out of this as well. So I would say in terms of wrestling, in terms of booking, all positive for me.